Okay, there we go. So for this lesson, we're going to be looking through working with Excel and Google Sheets, and we're going to be looking at a few specific tasks and a few specific things that Google Sheets and Excel can do that will be very, very beneficial for our project. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to work with some numbers in Excel. Now, Excel and Google Sheets are actually a giant calculator. There's a ton of really powerful stuff that it can do. And if we have numbers in here, it can add, subtract, divide, among many, many other things, but it can work as a calculator. So for this first example, we have some marks for a student. We have the names of all of the assessments here, and then we have the mark they received on the assessment, as well as how many marks the assessment was out of. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to find the percent that the student got on each assessment. So here's how that works. The first thing we do is we put an equal sign. An equal sign tells Google Sheets that we want it to do a task. So it's telling Google Sheets, I'm going to type something in, and you are going to need to do something. So now to find a percent, I take the mark I got and divide it. So to divide, I put a slash, and I divide it by how many possible marks there were. Then I multiply by 100. To multiply, I do the little asterisk, which is Shift 8, and that's how I find the multiply sign. And then I just press Enter when I am done, and the percent will show up. Now, I'm going to do it one more time just so you can see it again. So I start with an equals. And on this assessment, I got 12 out of 12. So I do 12 divided by 12 multiplied by 100. Now, if I click this, let's say I forgot what I typed in, it actually says it up here still. So if you forget it, not a big deal. It will say it up here so you can reference it there. Now, I want to do the same thing all the way down this column for each of those assessments. But I don't want to have to type that over and over. This one wouldn't be terrible because there's not that many assessments. But imagine if we had 100 assessments. That would be very, very challenging to type that all the way out for everything. So what I'm going to do is I highlight the ones I've already done. And you'll notice this little blue box that appears right here. What I'm going to do is I take it and I just click that little blue box until my cursor turns into this triangle, and I just drag it all the way down. Now what it does is it's smart enough to know that when I drag this all the way down, I want it to do the same thing for every row. I then like to go through and just double check that it happened the way I wanted it to. So this one here is B7 divided by C7 times 100. Now, if I double click on a cell, it'll highlight the ones that were used. So how I did that, I did it manually for 2 of them here. So I highlight the ones I did it manually for, and then I put my cursor over this little blue square in the bottom right-hand side, and I just drag it all the way down. Then I always like to just verify that it did it the way I wanted it to. So to really see, I can double click on the cell and it will highlight the ones it used and it will show me what was typed in. So that's the first thing, finding percents, right? We've all found percents before, but here what we want to do is we want to just basically do it all in one go. Now, the next thing we want to find is our overall mark. So we're going to assume these are all weighted the same, and we're going to find our overall mark. So let's determine how many marks we earned in total. We want to add up this column. To do that, I put an equal sign. An equal sign, again, tells Excel or Google Sheets that this is what I want it to do. Then I want it to add up that column. So I use the word sum. You can already see that it's highlighted because Google Sheets is smart enough to know that if I'm putting the sum in this cell, it's very likely that I want it to add up this column. Now, let's say it didn't do that, just so we have the whole process. I then put a bracket to tell it which ones I want to sum up. I highlight the ones I want, and I close the bracket. So again, we put an equal sign because we're going to ask Excel or Google Sheets to do something. Then I write the word sum because I want it to add everything up. And then I just highlight the ones I want it to sum up. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the total number of marks I could have earned. So we put an equal sign telling Google Sheets what to do. Write the word sum, and then in a bracket, highlight the ones I want. Now we want to find our overall percent. So we'll do that the same way as we were finding percents before. I put an equal sign. Then I wanted to take this one, divide it by this one, and multiply by 100. Same thing I did before. And my overall mark was a 79.9. Now for a mark or something like this, these buttons up here become very, very handy. This first one lessens how many decimal places we have, and the other one extends how many decimal places we have. So it's a really beneficial one to use. You will need brackets for here. So for example, if I just wrote sum and highlight it, it doesn't understand that that's what I want. It's because I'm putting a formula in here. So I do need brackets here. If you were referring to this one, you don't need brackets unless it's a BEDMAS issue. So unless maybe this was a BEDMAS issue, maybe that was like a plus sign or something, then you would need to include brackets for something like this. Okay, so that's the first one. And if you are still a little unclear, don't stress, because this will still be, like, the whole recording will be posted. So if you need to go back and look at something, you absolutely can. Okay. So are there any questions so far? Okay. So now we're going to do something a little bit different. And we're going to do what's called absolute referencing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of this for a moment. And I'm going to show you another way to calculate our percents. So up here in cell F1, I'm going to put the number 100. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to calculate the percents again, but in a slightly different way. So again, I'm putting an equal sign because I wanted to calculate something. I have 7 out of or divided by 10. And in this case, I wanted to multiply by 100. In this case, I've put 100 in a separate cell. And the reason why I've done that is sometimes you might have a number there that could change. Maybe it's not 100 like a percent. It could be something that we're multiplying by for right now. But if there was something changed, I would have to write a different number there. Now, if I press equals here, we still get 70. Now, if I move this down, just like we did before, you'll notice we have a bunch of zeros. And that's because it's referencing these cells. We don't want that. We want it to reference the 100. So how we do that is in front of this F, we put a $sign, and in front of the 1, we put a $sign. These $signs ensure that it's always referencing cell 1. If I drag it down, it's not going to change what cell it is. No matter what, it will always be referencing that 100 there. Okay, that's a bit of a confusing one, which truthfully you won't use too much in your summative, but a cool thing to know how to do. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do a different example. So we're going to go down here to sheet 2. So at the bottom, you're going to go here to sheet 2. And it should look like this. I don't know why these 2 ones are here. It should look like this. And sheet 2, again, I just clicked it at the bottom. Oh, we can repeat what that 100 is for sure. So over here, every single time, because I'm converting it to a percent, I always am multiplying by 100. Sometimes you have situations where it's not necessarily a percent and the number of 100. Sometimes maybe I have a multiplier or something like that that I always have to multiply everything by. So if I put it over here, and then when I type it in, I use this $, it basically just allows it to always stay 100. Now, let's say I wasn't multiplying by 100, I want to multiply by 200. What happens is it changes everything in this column, in column D. So that's why we do it, is so that then if I change the 100, it will just change everything else. Okay. So now we'll look at this data for some different hockey teams. And it has their data for the season. So how many wins they had, how many losses, ties, goals for, goal against, and how many points they have. Now, there's a few things we're going to do with this data just because it's a little bit different. This data has lots of information about all of the teams. So it is very important that we know how to work with all of this data. So the first thing we're going to work on is charting. So what we want to do is we want to insert a chart for the number of points. So we want to figure out which teams have the most points based off of this chart. So what I want to do is I want to highlight the team. Now, typically when we make a chart, we just highlight 2 things that are right beside each other, right? Typically we would just do this, highlight, insert chart. But what if they aren't beside each other? What I want to do in that case is I highlight my first one. Then you want to hold down your control button on a PC, and your command button on a Mac, and then highlight the other one. So if they're not together, again, what we do is we highlight the first one, then hold your control button on a PC or your command button on a Mac, and then highlight your number of points. Now, in order to make a chart, we go insert chart. And it gave us a bar graph. Now, sometimes it figures out what kind of chart you want pretty quick, and sometimes it doesn't. So sometimes you have to play around with these different settings in order to get the right kind of chart. And as we go through future lessons, we will talk about some of these specific tools in more detail. Okay, so there is our chart. Definitely we'll be practicing a lot with charts in the next little while. Now, the last thing that one of the last things we want to do, there's a couple more, is we're going to be sorting our graph. So to sort this, sometimes I want to sort in terms of wins or ties, and I want to sort my data. So what I do when I want to sort my data, I'm just going to get rid of that for right now, is I'm going to highlight all of my data. And then I'm going to go to the data tab up here, and I'm going to go to sort range. Here it allows me to sort by column A, But I want to go to sort range because I want to have a little bit more control over what I'm sorting by. So if I click sort range, I want to sort this, and I can sort it here however I want. So I want to sort, what does it say in the sheet? I just want to make sure I'm doing the same thing. We want to sort by points in descending order. Then there's some other ones. So we want to sort by points. So column G in descending order. So that would be Z to A. Then we want to sort by wins in descending order. So we'll add another column. Wins is in column B by descending order. And then we'll add one more because it also wants us to sort by losses in ascending order. So losses is in row C in ascending order. And then you sort it. Now, when you sort these, it will sort the whole column. All of these values are still ones associated with the nice guys. It hasn't changed. They're still associated with the nice guys, so you can still use all of those. Similarly, all of these are still the points for the ice hogs. All of these are still the points for the blades, etc. So there's lots of ways that you can go and sort that, and it's really, really handy that you can do that. Just remember that we have to highlight it all first, and then we go data, sort, and then I can put all my sorting in one at a time by whichever column I want. Yes, this is a great question. Is the first one you sort a priority? Yes. So it will then sort by the first one and then sort by the second one. For example, there are people in our class with the same last name. When I have everybody in a Google Sheet and it's all mixed up, I first sort by last name, and then I'll sort again by first name. So we're still sorted by last name, but then within it, it will sort everybody by last name as well. So it is super important which order we do it in. That was a great question. For our purposes with our project, it's likely we will only be sorting it one time. So it's not too big of a deal in terms of order. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so the next thing that is in your sheet there, it actually doesn't work so well on Google Sheets. But what I will say is if you, let's say, have a really, really long data set, maybe instead of only having these 6 teams, let's say we had 6,000 teams and I want to find one, I can always do Control F or Command F on a Mac, and I can find a certain team. If I type that in, it will immediately find it right away, and then I can see everything about that team. So just keep that in mind that you can always do that as you go along. Okay. So the next thing we'll do is we'll go to this new sheet. And for this new sheet, we're going to do what's called referencing. Now, for referencing, sometimes I want information from one of these sheets over here. So maybe I want a number from this sheet over here, and I want to put it in this sheet here. So what I want to do is I want to reference it into another sheet. So what I'm going to do is I type in, I'm just going to, Rita, I just want to make sure I'm doing it the way it wanted me to. Okay, So here, I want to just include the teams, the goals for, and the goals against. That's all I want to include. Now, could I just copy this over and go like this and copy it? Sure. But sometimes I want to have them connected because let's say I update this spreadsheet, sometimes I want my other one to automatically update as well. So what I do to reference it is I put in an equal sign because again, I'm telling Google Sheets to do something. Now, I think it's on the outside. It's a little bit different in Google Sheets, so just bear with me for a second. So we'll put this little quotation mark on the outside of the equal sign. Now, this is just telling us that we want like the text to go in here. Now, we are referencing sheet 2. So I write sheet 2. Then I put a exclamation point because it's for sure sheet 2. And I want to put a 1 here. Oh, it didn't work. I think that should be on the inside. Nope. Sorry, it's a little bit different on Google Sheets. Truthfully, this isn't something that you would do on your project. It's just something kind of cool to know. So here's what you have to type in on Google Sheets. So yeah, it works without quotations. Sorry. On Excel, you need the quotations. So my bad. In the worksheet, it says quotation. So I apologize for that. But here we just do sheet 2 because down here it was called sheet 2. Then I put an exclamation point because we're referencing sheet 2 only. And I wanted what was in cell A1. So it mimics what was in cell A1 and puts it here. Now we want all of the team information. So again, equals, we want the information from sheet 2. And I put an exclamation point because I want only sheet 2. But now I want A2. And that was the nice guys. I check back here. Look, and A2 was the nice guys. Now it should let me, if I highlight these and go to the little blue box in the side, it should let me drag down so I can see everything. Just like that. Now we only wanted goals for and against. So goals for were in column E. So we want to reference this column. So equals sheet 2. And it was in column E. So we want equals sheet 2, E1. That's okay, Helene, no worries. Now it's going to autofill it. You can do that if you want to, but I just want to go through and show you how to do it again. So equals sheet 2, and we want E2. Now I will say though with this, make sure you keep your names of your sheets very simple. In the past, I've changed these sheet names to something with a lot of spaces in it or something that's too detailed. And Google Sheets does not like that. So just be mindful of that. And then we'll do the same thing for our goals against. So goals against was living in column F. So equals sheet, oops, didn't put an equal sign, equals sheet 2. And we want what was in F1. And then we want what was in F2, F3, F4, F5, F6, F7. Now the nice thing about this, see how up here was 64? Let's say I made a mistake on my master list and I change this to 100. It will also now change in here because I'm referencing that original sheet. So that's why it's so important to reference that original sheet sometimes if all of my sheets are connected. Are there any questions so far? Okay. Awesome. So let's try one more thing, which will just be our homework, but I want to show you one thing with the homework stuff. So there is some homework for you to do here. I'm just going to zoom out just a little bit. Oh, too much. And I'll show you what's going on with the homework. Okay, so this homework has a bunch of extra practice. Now, as we go through the summative, if there are still pieces that you are unsure of with Google Sheets or Excel, please reach out for help. Just having one quick little lesson with this stuff, it's helpful, but it does take a little while to get comfortable with this stuff. So if you need help, please, please ask. Okay, so these steps are going to help you with this homework question. So if you look at the bottom, there's a homework intro. So this asks for some, gives you some steps on what to do. And over here, oops, I put that chart in earlier. Over here, you'll go through and you will fill out the chart. So for example, this homework intro, question 1 says in cell D7, insert the sum function for B5 to M5. So in cell D7, I insert the sum function for here to here. And it will walk you through everything, every step. And if there are any questions, just like any other homework, we can go through it tomorrow morning. Now, there's a couple other homework pieces here too. I'm just going to quickly stop the recording because we don't need the recording on anymore.